Welcome back, Year 9, to Lesson 2 for Week 8 here. And today we're going to delve a little bit deeper into people who are earning wages, and we're going to look at what overtime is and look at this idea of what an allowance is. And so let's jump straight away and look at overtime. So we kind of pointed out last lesson, but overtime is where people work outside what we call normal hours. And when they do that, they get paid at a slightly higher rate to compensate them for having to do that little bit extra. Now, normal hours might change depending on what type of job you do, but usually some things that would trigger a person getting paid that extra rate, getting paid overtime, and when they work more than 8 hours in a shift, so more than 8 hours in a row, for argument's sake, if you work 10-hour shift, there might be some overtime there. If you're working really, really late at night, you might get some kind of overtime or penalty rates because, that's working outside or going that little bit extra. Working on Sunday or public holidays, you may get those penalty rates or those overtime rates. And then if you work more than 40 hours in a week, sometimes that you will get paid some overtime as well. But what are overtime rates? Well, a couple of phrases that you hear thrown around when we talk about overtime is this idea called time and a half. Now, time and a half is where you get all of your hourly pay and then you get paid half of it again. So it's all your pay plus half of it as extra. And the number when we need to think about when we get time and a half is we get our hourly rate, we multiply it by 1.5. When we get paid double time, well, we're just multiplying our hourly rate by 2. We're getting double what we normally would get. Double time and a half is when we get 2.5 times more than what we normally would have got in a single hour, and you can kind of guess there, triple time is where we get 3 times more than what we normally would get. Okay, let's go on and have a look at some allowances and what they are. Okay, an allowance is paid to people who work employees for work-related expenses or when you have to work under, kind of difficult or challenging situations. Now, there's a whole different range of reasons that someone may get paid an allowance, and you can find them in what's called the industry award. An industry award is just a document that sets out all the pay conditions for that type of work. So if you work in a retail shop, there's a retail award. If you work in the hospitality industry, there's a hospitality award. A construction award, and it just sets out all the rules about how you get paid. So some examples of some allowances that you can get a tool allowance. So if you're a mechanic, plumber, builder, someone along those lines, starting out, you can get paid a tool allowance. If you use your car for work, you can get a petrol allowance if you have to use your own phone, or if you have to wash your work clothes, which have got your uniform on. Your people that employ you may pay you a bit extra for that. Now, some of those difficult or dangerous conditions, if you have to work at great heights, have to work in really confined, tight spaces, if you're constantly working in wet weather, or if you're living away from home for a couple of nights to complete your job, you can also get an extra bit of money put into your pay to compensate you for having to do that little bit extra. Okay, so let's jump in and look at some examples. All right, some examples, guys. So Ava works in childcare and earns $16.40 an hour. That's going to be important to me. During the week, she worked 37 hours normal time. Important to me. And then she worked 6 hours overtime, which is important. And then there's that word, time and a half. That tells me how I'm going to calculate her overtime. And remember, when we see time and a half, we're thinking about that number, 1.5. So we're asked to find what her total weekly earnings were. All right, so let's jump into this. So her weekly earnings are going to equal, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do this in brackets and I'm going to add them together. Right, so she gets paid $16.40 for 37 normal hours plus $16.40 times the overtime rate, so 1.5 time and a half, and she did that for 6 hours. So when we punch those, onto our calculator, our normal time hours and our overtime hours, when we add them on our calculator, we figure out that Ava has earned $754.40 for that week. All right. Example 2 here. A painter on Sydney Harbour Bridge earns $24.15 per hour, as well as a height allowance. You can imagine working up on the Harbour Bridge, quite high, and that is $25.10, but this is different. This one says per day. So for every day that I'm working, or this person is working on the Harbour Bridge, they're getting paid $25.10 just to be up there at that height, and then obviously on top of that, whatever hours they work. She works for 10 hours a day for 5 days. What was her total earnings? So again, for this one, I'm just going to put things in brackets. I'm going to put in one set of brackets how much her normal pay is for one day. I'm going to multiply that by 5. And then I'm going to add with that $25 times 5 for her allowance. So her earnings are going to equal to 10 hours a day at $24.15 times 5. So she worked 5 days for 10 hours at $24.15. And I'm going to add to that $25.10 times 5, because there's 5 days working on the bridge, 5 days of that height allowance. And when we add those together, we get a total of $1,333 for working on the Harbour Bridge that week. Alright guys, your work for this week is to complete the questions below in this lesson notes on overtime and allowances. Mark your work from the answers, fix up any mistakes. Don't forget, we want to see all of your working out. If you have time after that, complete the 10 quick questions. Remembering taking a photo of your work as always, uploading it to Canvas by Friday at 3 o'clock. And remembering that here are some links to the playlist as well, so you can go back and check out some videos to help reinforce your understanding. Alright guys, until next time, catch you later.